أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. So a while ago I was reading several books on military history, and don't ask me why, I read weird things. But I was reading a book by Western military historians about the phenomenal success that Islam and Muslims had in a 50-year period immediately following the death of the Rasulullah ﷺ. And one of the overwhelming themes of the military historians is that the Muslim record is unreliable. Okay, so the Muslim record of what happened there is unreliable. So why? From their perspective, they say, look, we know the Muslims won. It's a fact, right? There was a Roman Empire, there was a Persian Empire, they collapsed, there was built an Islamic State. And the Western military historians, especially from the Roman side, have Roman records. They show that in this battle there were 30,000 soldiers, in that battle there were 100,000 soldiers, in this battle there were 250,000 soldiers, and they know these numbers are accurate because they have payroll records. They have records of the number of breakfasts and lunches that were cooked, especially on the Roman side. The Persian side, they don't have similar records. Okay? Then they compare it to the Muslim side, and they find a very strange situation that they cannot understand. So they find, for example, a battle where the Roman side had 200,000 soldiers and the Muslim side had like 40,000 soldiers. And in their mind, this is a bizarre record. This record has to be wrong. Right? And as a case in point, they show letters that are exchanged between the Khalifa and the Muslim commander in the field. And from their mind, this doesn't even make sense. They're like, look, here is a letter from the Khalifa to the commander. He goes on for 1.5 pages talking about spiritual things. And then there's like 3 lines about the battle. Has nothing to do with the battlefield or the major question of the day. There are examples where the commander asks, please, I beg you, send me 3,000 or 4,000 or 10,000 soldiers. And the Khalifa responds by saying, I'm sending you one man, he's like 1,000 people. This record is meaningless. We do not know what to do with it. Now, see, here is a very interesting aspect of this. Intuitively, every time I mention this to a group of Muslims, we intuitively understand what is happening, right? We understand the piece that the Western military historian cannot see. We understand that there is a dimension to Islam other than numbers. Right? And for those of us in this room, we understand that dimension to be Tarbiya. That it could make sense for Abu Bakr radiallahu anh to say about Ka'ka bin Amr, that this man is like 1,000 men, and an army with Ka'ka in it cannot lose. What are you talking about? I'm giving you Ka'ka, you should win. So, but we have less soldiers. It doesn't matter, you should win. These are my expectations. This actually makes sense for people like you and me. It could make sense that Umar bin Khattab would send a letter to Amr ibn al-As and say, I'm sending you 4 people. Each of these 4 people are like 1,000. And you look at Abdullah bin Zubayr radiallahu anhu and say, yes, this man is like 1,000 people. That makes sense. And why is that the case? In preparation for this Khatira, I went back and dusted off some of my old books, looking for the letters of Abu Bakr and Umar. And yesterday I read more than 100 of these letters in preparation for this conversation. I read 100 letters by Abu Bakr and Umar. Here's something very interesting about it. The vast majority of these letters, maybe even 75 or 80% of the content of these letters, are not about running a state. They are about dealing with the Tarbiya level of the people. Abu Bakr and Umar radiallahu an were concerned when they would address their commander, when they would address their governor. They were concerned about growing the people and maintaining their level. So you see a letter from Abu Bakr to his governor of Iraq. He says, I am sending to you Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. Consult him and use him as your advisor. And I need you to know that I have made a big sacrifice in letting him go to you. Because I used to use him as my advisor. And I was learning from him. And now I'm giving him to you. This is one of my biggest assets. Right? So this is a perspective on the struggle that the average person is not looking at it from this perspective. But this is the underlying meaning of the incident where Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anh gathered his companions and asked them, you all know this incident because it is mentioned in Tarbiya circles all the time. He asked his companions, if you could wish for something, what would you wish for? And some of the Sahaba said, we would wish for a mountain of gold or a mountain of silver, and we would spend it in the path of Allah, and Allah would be happy with us. And Umar bin Khattab is unhappy with this answer. He is dissatisfied. And they asked him eventually, Amirul Mu'mineen, what would you ask for? He said, I would ask for people like Abdullah bin Zubayr. I would ask for people like Mu'adh bin Jabal. And they would serve Allah, and Allah would be pleased. And in this statement, he identifies an essential reality. Look, we are gathered here for an organizational meeting. Over the course of the next 2 days, inshallah, we will talk about organizational matters, boards and elections and bylaws and memberships and conventions and political activities and buildings and masjids and centers. Okay? And these are ways of measuring organizational effectiveness. They're true. All those are true, or whatever those scientists of organizational dynamics have said. And these are things we have to talk about. It's valid. However, the underlying fact is this, that we are in the Tarbiya business. We are in the business of manufacturing activists. We are in the business of taking people and growing their level. That is what we are about. All that other stuff is extrinsic, it's external. That is the shell, that is the skin. But the inner backbone is Tarbiya. And on this, with the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, will rest our success or failure. On our ability to grow ourselves and on our ability to grow the people around us. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم إنه هو الغفور الرحيم.